Well, the lowest point was at the transition between interior design to blockchain space, because in every industry there's scammers. So I was scammed from the interior design business. When I started to see what could save me, quote unquote, my mentor came in and he taught me why crypto is the way it is back then. And he also told me if you want to go into this space, you got to be even mentally more sound than anything else. When people started coming to me and asking me how to get involved in the space, that to me was kind of a validation of what I've been doing in terms of educating the public in the space.
Leslie, thank you so much again for being here. Tell us, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Singapore, so yes.
How were you like when you were a kid?
I'm actually a gracious and fun person to be around with. Yeah, I like to have a lot of fun and play a lot, to be honest. I'm non-academic, to be honest. I'm more skills-based. Yeah, I'm more skills-based. And my humble beginnings began when I was in interior design for 19 years. So the interesting thing is that the business did not do well. And I had to find a pivot. So I was looking for the next best thing to be in, and I just so happened to have many friends who came to me and say, why don't you look into the Bitcoin aspect of things? So I didn't understand Bitcoin back then, and so I dived deep into the technology to understand it and realized that the technology itself was like the internet back then in the 80s basically, right? And I always had this notion when I was a child that if I had that opportunity, if I knowing that the internet is going to be going to be in a boom status, right? That what would I have done back then? And watching a lot of Back to the Future. Like when you go back to time, what could you have done best, right? And I saw that as an opportunity to quickly get out of the old industry that I was in for 19 years and then move on to the blockchain industry as a result. The old industry that I was in also taught a lot of business entrepreneurship in that aspect, because I was helping my friends set up their business, for their interior design business. And so I was actually helping a lot of I was jumping from one startup to another in the interior design industry. So it was a natural progression for me to go into blockchain because I'm more business savvy and in terms of the mindsets of what businesses are in that aspect. So that's how I got involved in the blockchain space. Yeah.
So interior design was really your first ever passion, would you say?
Yes. So interior design was I still get into the whole design look and the perspectives that I look into when I look in architecture brings forth that whole understanding of business from a different perspective. So I take that as a skill set to actually go into understanding other people's business and bringing forth and how to actually merge them together with the blockchain side of things. Yeah.
Family dynamics. What about your mom and dad? What are they doing?
My dad. So we come from a very humble background. My dad and my mom, they work from the working class, the standard normal working class. Didn't really have a bit of a background per se. But what's interesting is that my grandfather was the sole survivor of the Nanjing massacre in Singapore in the World War II. So we always say that if our grandfather had not survived the massacre shootings that was in Bedok, we would be here. I would be here talking to you. So that's always a story for that. So and true enough, the National Archives in Singapore itself, they have actually archived a conversation that was with my grandfather, I think way back in the 90s before he passed on, when he was 80 plus.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have siblings?
Yes, I do have one. I have a brother, and interestingly, recently he has also joined me in the space as well. So he's gone into he's IT trained. And as a result, I kind of thought, hey, do you want to come into the blockchain space? And he was like, yeah, sure, because he's also very process driven, and he wants to learn about it, and brought him into a few understanding of certain projects, and he's with a project now, so which is cool. Yeah, so I finally get to talk to somebody who in the family that allows me to actually express my the business ups and downs, right? So like, oh man, what can we do? Is there any advice that you can give? Or he comes to me for advice and things, and vice versa. So it's cool. Yeah.
So much perks of having a brother.
Yeah.
Tell me about your lowest point in life.
Well, the lowest point was at the transition between interior design to blockchain space, because in every industry there's scammers. So I was scammed from the interior design business, and interestingly enough, I've never said this alive. Okay, so yeah, the salesperson that was in charge, you could say that on hindsight, it was folly on my end for not checking to collect funds from the client directly in cash, even though there was a business invoice. And you could say that there was a very stupid mistake basically for not checking, but the client was also foolhardy enough to actually pass that along. And as a result, I had to take on the responsibility of the debts that come forth from that project itself. So it wasn't small, and it kind of put me in a very bad position financially, and it didn't help that the creditors were really quite badly on that. So you could say I was quite depressed for that time. It was about 2 years. Here's a shout out, right? So when I started to see what could save me, quote unquote, and I did explore blockchain, and from that matter, my mentor came in. So I have a crypto mentor by the name of Dunstan Teo. Vince also knows him, and actually helped me and go through the journey of this space. And truly enough, I'm respectful enough to know that he really saved my life in that aspect. So, and he taught me why crypto is the way it is back then. And he also told me that if you want to go into this space, you got to be even mentally more sound than anything else, because when I first joined in 2015, blockchain and the crypto space itself didn't have the kind of fanfare the way it is now today. There was a lot of rejection. There was a lot of people saying it's very scammy, it's very, is it something that's even worth looking at? Why is it so risky? The price could drop 90%, overnight and things like that. Back then it was like this. My family members also, question, like, they go around asking, is Leslie okay? It's literally basically. And the second person I think that gave me the most support is my wife as well. So thankfully she stood by me all this time, with no second questions asked, basically, and she was supportive, in many ways. It has not been hard. It has been hard on her, to be honest. So I just want to acknowledge that as well. So it's just being real here. Yeah.
Let's go with the proudest moments of your life. Can you give me some of those?
Wow, the proudest moment was when people started coming to me and asking me how to get involved in the space. And the people were the naysayers 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And they said, that, Leslie, well, I shouldn't have said, what I said previously, and could you teach me how to get into the space, right? I want to understand more this time around. And that, to me, was a kind of a validation of what I've been doing in terms of educating the public in the space and teaching the business partners on the blockchain space as well. And that, to me, is a very proud moment, because there can be no form of vindication, like for a better word, that when somebody who is your naysayer comes to you and say that, I believe what you're teaching and I want to know more. Yeah, and so that would be my proudest moment, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, I want to quickly pivot to Oz. And what do you think Oz would or provides you in a personal level?
Well, I have a personal relationship with Vince in the first place, so I like the fact that I could always go to him and talk to him about business stuff and bounce business ideas with him. I mean, just before this interview, we had a good 1 hour session where we caught up with each other, even though we have not met each other for a long time, and we just come together and say, okay, look, we are doing this, is there any way to collaborate on certain things? And to be honest, most of the ideas are sometimes being used by both of us in different business aspects. So he's like a sparring partner in me for that matter. And Oz Finance, with him spearheading Oz Finance itself, I think you guys are onto something, to be honest, especially with the business model that he just created with that. So when he pitched the idea, he would also ask me and say that, whether, Leslie, is this something that is viable in the first place? I said, and I was like, dude, you're onto something here, to be honest, especially with the residency tokens that he had mentioned for that. And I'm quite happy that he's doing this quite successfully in the last few year or so. Yeah, that would be.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. It was lovely getting to meet you as a human being. You've shed layers with us, and we're truly grateful. And it served this purpose. You've inspired many, many, many others. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.